design basics. So we're going to pick up where we left off, and I previewed where we were before. Reminder, we have a header and basically 3 columns under here. And also to remind you, we have the second and third column are fixed pixels. And I'll turn the backgrounds back on for a minute just to refresh everyone's memory. And they use the same class to define them. So same width, same height, same background color, was all taken up by a single class, just applied to 2 different columns. Okay, so let's jump back into Dreamweaver, where we have this layout, and I'm going to put the columns back on there so we can watch what happens with the columns. So we'll make them really stand out by making them like a light green or something. Okay, look. Oops, that's the header, Jeff. I'm going to do Command Z. I'll do that. Pay attention. So pick columns. Those are both pick columns. And let's do the light green again. Okay. So there we see them. Okay, we are going to now make a responsive image because that should be review. So these images, I've already made a selector for them. Remember, there are the images within pick columns, which are these 2 greenish, light green boxes, columns. So how do we make the image responsive? Well, remember, it's a 2-step operation. First, we set the width to 100%. Just type it in. Now look how they're all askew. As I was putting them in, like let's say I did like 50%, 70%. That's 700%. Then they're starting to look all funny. They're not square images. So that tells you we're not quite done. All right, so 100%, but then also remember you have to go to your split view and you have to delete the widths and the heights. So I would just go through and pull this out for the 6 images that are in here. I missed one up there, but that's okay. We'll get to it. Make sure you don't get any extra curly brace or anything like that. And you will see that the images then are still 100% wide, but the aspect ratio remains the same. In fact, let's do this. I think I'm missing one still. You can tell I haven't done this guy right here. It's being stretched out a bit long. So now that that's selected, there we go. Now I can see the width and height. All right. So step 1 is done, and step 2 is done. So they're 100%. Now here's what's cool. You can see that they're now 100% of the column. So let's work top to bottom, because the next move is to make the parents, which are the columns in this case, this pick column, and this main nav, which is on the left side, and the header, have to make those a little bit responsive. So let's start with the header. I don't really we've already made it 100%, and I don't really want to change the height. I could change the height to a percentage, and we can check to see if it works. Let's just say like something crazy like 40%. And you can tell it's working. If it doesn't work for you, it's because you forgot to make the body 100% and HTML 100%. All right, so, but what's weird about these percentages, I'm going to go ahead and save this and save my style sheet and jump back over to this guy over here and hit refresh. Now, you might have saw a few things happen. Oh, I must have undone that somehow. Let's put this back to 40%. What did I do? Did I turn something off? Because it doesn't seem to be doing anything now. Okay, there we go. So what I was going to mention is heights are more difficult because the page scrolls and the browser has a hard time forming the height. There are other units that would be easier to use than percents for heights, and we'll get to them later. If you click on this little guy, I can give you a hint. There's VH. And this VW for width, the VH for height. So those will be helpful. But in this case, let's save this one more time and see how this works in a browser. I've loaded this up from, so it's, that's 40%, but it's not 40, it's 40% of the entire thing, not 40% of the screen, which is where that VH unit comes in. But again, we'll save that for later. What's a better idea for the height is actually just using something that's appropriate, which is whatever it was before, I think was pretty good. That looks good, 120 pixels. And then to center the Oktoberfest graphic, we can just go to our type align thing and click center, and it will center it. So that's an easy fix for this one. I could make this image responsive, but that would be rough because then I'd have to make the container also responsive as well. I could take the height off the container and just make the image responsive, but this will be fine. This really covers us for a lot of sizes. Like we can get super small with this and that'll still look pretty good. And then we'll use a media query later on to make a smaller graphic or a different graphic, swap out there. Okay, this is far more interesting doing this part. So let's start with our main nav. And what we really want to do is figure out a real estate across here in terms of 100% is the total, right? So maybe this is about 20%. This is about 30, and that's about 30. That would be 30, 60, 80. And then I also have to account for padding on the left and right sides and margins on the left and right sides because everything across has to add up to 100%. Or weird things will happen. Like the next column will get kicked down. Actually, here's a good, let me show you. Let's refresh this. Did I save these guys? Let's save this guy, and jump here and refresh for a second. Now we're back to our, but if I start to make this guy smaller here, what happens is these are floated columns. So if there's not enough room for that column, it kicks down here. Now, so we need to avoid that from happening. So as long as we don't go over 100%, that won't happen. And right now they're fixed widths, so whatever widths all these are together adds up to more than the width of my browser, obviously, and that's why the next thing is getting kicked to the next level. But with percentages, these will all shrink as I go down, so this won't happen unless I somehow make it more than 100%. Now, the trick, and this is key, is if you use percentages, you have to stick with percentages. So if I use percentages for widths for one thing, I should use width for everything. Now there's a calc formula that you can mix these together, but we're going to save that for a different lecture. Because the baseline rule is that use percentages across the board for the widths and for all the widths. All right, so for your padding will be percentages, the margins will be percentages, everything will be percentages. Otherwise, you have flexible variables in with fixed pixel values, and the math gets weird. Okay, so I'm going to put this back to live view because we don't need to do anything with our HTML anymore. All right, we're done with that basically. Everything will happen over here in our CSS designer. So let's start with our main nav. And we'll say the main nav, what's the background color for this? Is the dark brown. The main nav, I'm actually going to do show set, and I'm going to take out the height because we don't need it. It will be formed by the contents. And like if I need a little bit more padding on the bottom, I could put some padding on the bottom. And I'm going to stick with the pixel values for the heights for now. And let's start moving percentages here, because remember padding actually sort of, it counts as the width and the height. So when I put padding on, it actually makes that nav box bigger. Okay, so let's give it also percentage width, and I think I said 20%. Really, you should sit down with this sheet of paper and figure out all your, so this is 20%, and we got 2% padding and 2% here, that's 24%, right? You know what, I'm gonna make this, so okay, 24%. I'm writing that down on my little, I keep a notepad next to me. Okay. Now when we flex this, you can see that flexes. And also note that the buttons are flexing too. It's because the buttons themselves, I never actually gave a width to. Right? I've said display as a block, so it would fill that whole line. But since there's some padding within there, they don't hit the edge. You know, there's padding within this bigger container, so that keeps them from, you know, if I want them to be thinner, I could go to its parent and put more padding on there. I would just have to remember that as I do that, let's put more padding in. You know what, let's put like 4% and 4%. And then to make this guy smaller again, let's do 17%. And that makes this whole box take up 25%, because 17% and 4 is 25%. That's a nice, easy number for me to remember. I'm going to make a new note of that. All right, so I can make these guys, these don't have a width. That's all formed by, you know, it's just the buttons get pushed in based on, all right, and again, I'm not designing for this yet, although that's still almost working. The brewery thing is getting a little tight, but that's, later on we'll do a media query, and when I hit a certain pixel up here, I will tell it to use a smaller M size for the type. Or I'll do something different for the whole thing, like if I was doing for a phone, I'd probably have this stack up at the top and take up the whole width of the page even. All right, let's go up to, so we can skip this guy, because again, we didn't even set a width or height for it, so no need for percentages. And then the columns, those are super important. I'm going to go ahead and take out the height, because again, the height can be formed by what is ever in it. So it's got stuff in there, so there's a little extra padding on the bottom, 50 pixels, so I have a little extra room down there. But basically, it's formed by the height of all of those images and the height with the additional padding and margins. Okay, so for the images we've already set to be responsive, all we have to do is do something with our columns. And so and remember, it's the same thing using both of them. So the same rule, pick columns, has been applied to both this column and this column. Okay, same class. That's the beauty of classes, you can reuse them. All right, let's see, 30 and 30 is 60, plus I already have 25, that'd be 85. Okay, I have plenty of room for a 30% column. And then again, I do have margins, so this margin over here, let's make that 5%. Let's see, so 30, and I see that's on there twice, because it's on the left column of this and the left column of that. That's 10%. So 30, 60, 65, 70, and then 25 for everything else. So that's 95. So it does not go over 100. So that's good. It can go under 100. That's totally fine. I'll have, it won't be quite centered. I have a little less room here than here. I could go 6% then. And that gets a little, well, I liked 5%. But here, watch what happens if I put too much margin on here. That's when the next column pops down. That means all my math is incorrect. I've gone over 100%, and now my next column ends up down there, and I don't want that to happen. So just go lower. 6% was actually, I think 5% was a nice. It's okay to leave like this forming automatically, this right one. I can put auto if I want. And whatever's left here at the end will be fine. Okay. Let's go ahead and save and save. We're actually done with our relative units. Everything is just percentages. I'm going to go back to Google Chrome, hit refresh. The last thing I'm going to do is turn off these columns now that everyone's clear where things are. And you can see as I get smaller, everything works. Look at this, yay.